Talking about all morning long, the sweltering heat sticking around for today and tomorrow, marking the official start of a heat wave in our area.
Yeah, many of us are no longer working from home and have to venture out into the heat, which can be dangerous if you're not prepared. So here are some tips on what you need to do to beat the heat is Dr. Hahn. He's an emergency medicine doctor at Mount Sinai Hospital Morningside. Good morning, Dr. Hahn. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we are on the cusp of a second heat wave this summer, and as more and more people are out and about, have you seen an increase in heat-related emergency room visits?
Fingers crossed thus far, we haven't really had anything outside of the ordinary. People just kind of overdoing it a little bit, becoming too fatigued, dizzy, lightheaded. Typically, when we get a high volume of people, it's when there are big sporting events or when the power goes out. And so people lose their AC and the hospital has backup generators. So people will show up. So
But we did see a few brownouts, and we're worried that that may continue. So folks do have to be aware that, these heat-related injuries could be on the rise.
Yeah, and I would say if that does happen and you, are, hooked up to something like oxygen where you lose your electricity, or if it's just too hot, we are open. One thing I also wanted to say is that I haven't seen a COVID positive case in about a month.
That's
at
great.
least. So
That's
I
great.
would say that fear of maybe coming to the emergency room, I would hope that people can kind of move past that and come in if they really need help.
I guess some people think like, I've been around the heat for some time. I can go outside. What is the number one thing people forget when it comes to how dangerous the heat could actually be?
I think that people sometimes, like speaking, as a recently young male, I guess I'm aging now, but kind of knowing that population where you just go out and play soccer or do whatever it is you want to do and just think that you're going to be fine when it's 100 degrees outside. I think that kind of pushing yourself to the extremes with physical activity is probably one of the biggest risks.
Like what you said there, a recently young man.
Are you in the same category?
I'm going to describe myself moving forward.
And that's true because, we may look at the temperature, but then you have to factor in what it feels like outside, especially with humidity, and that can really ratchet up those numbers there. So what are some of the best ways to beat the heat if you do want to stay active?
I think I have some young kids and we use one of these devices, no conflicts of interest. This is just like something you can pick up at Target. It's basically like a little fan that also sprays water. So it basically mimics your body's own sweating and kind of evaporative cooling system that you kind of naturally have. And it's like really effective. You kind of just sit there and spray when you're out at the park or whatever, and it certainly cools you down. I think also just being mindful of drinking plenty of water and getting in the shade if you get too hot. I think some kind of basic things to keep in mind.
I know. And it all sounds basic, but it's always a good reminder, right? So for example, heat exhaustion, what would you say some of the warning signs are if you're suffering from it?
Yeah, heat exhaustion is basically someone who looks really, really hot and really, really sweaty and fatigued, but they are still compos mentis. They can speak to you. They're not confused. They can answer questions appropriately. There's someone who can kind of get to a cool space, drink some water, cool down on their own. Those are kind of the first signs of, heat exhaustion moving into a heat stroke, which is a different category and much more dangerous.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So what is the difference?
Really, the biggest difference is people become confused and kind of somnolent. So there are all of these other features, things where your body loses the ability to cool. So you might noticing that the sweating stops because that's how we cool off is by basically this evaporative cooling. So if you're so dehydrated, you can't sweat, you can't cool. So people's face will look kind of beet red because they're dilating their blood vessels trying to get the heat out, but they can't do it. But I would say the biggest thing is just if someone is confused or, altered in some way and not waking up and they're hot, just life lesson, fever and confusion, bad. So come to the emergency room in that case.
Yeah. It always sounds like, silly to talk about this on a hot day, but it's always a good reminder. Dr. Hahn, thank you for being here this morning to talk all about it and lay it out.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right,
Stay cool.